Welcome to Cuppa Press. My name is Caleb. Love having you here, Michaela and Chris. I am very excited to have you both here on today's episode of Cuppa Press. We've got a full episode of fun things planned for you, all things around content and strategy. I know I'm from sales, so I'm definitely going to be focused more a little bit on that, but we'll make sure to give you all the room to talk about marketing and content strategy on the whole. So to get started for today's episode, we're going to start off with Never Have I Ever. And real simple, just the twist on the party game is that if you've done the statement, you're going to go ahead and take a sip. If not, I'm the one that's going to go ahead and take a sip out of my coffee mug for today. So the first one is accounted innocent one-time readers as eternal subscribers to our company's emails. I know we're all part of some company's emails, but have you done that to your own subscribers by any chance? Oh, wow. Lovely. So just for that one, I guess I'm going to have to start you both off today with a sip of my own. Perfect. So on to the second one. Gotten into an argument about the Oxford comma or the M dash. I know content's not my favorite. Ooh, go for it. I bet. That's a good one, Michaela and Chris. I love it. We're off to a fantastic start for today. So right after the Oxford comma and the M dash, we're going to go to created a white paper that you've never read yourself. What does that look like?
To clarify, never read after it was designed. You mean like a post design?
Absolutely. I mean, if you can blindfoldedly write a whole white paper and not read it, I'd be impressed. So, but afterwards, if you haven't taken a look at it, I can believe that one too. All right, no sips from the both of you. I guess that's another sip from me. I guess I'm leading today. Here we go.
So we're going to be so caffeinated in like 10 minutes here.
Absolutely. I think it's going to be much needed for the rest of the segments that we've got going on. So, lost my mind over trying to prove a piece of content's ROI. It's got to be your favorite words, guys. I'm really expecting a sip out of you. There we go.
Do we shotgun a coffee? Is that an option?
Might need to do that. We'll probably think about that for the next episode. Lovely. And for the last one for this segment, valued quantity of published pieces over the quality. Quantity over quality. Okay, Michaela. Wow. I'm not going to say anything about it. Yep.
It's tough to say, because we're a studio, so I'm like trying to separate in my head between what I've seen clients do, and I like to think that I have not done that. Yeah. But we don't publish.
That's a good one.
Early days. Yeah.
Yeah. Just on that note, Michaela, early days, I think we've all done a bunch of stuff, and it's probably just one of those. Wonderful, guys. I think we've got just about enough caffeine in our system to get us started for the rest of today's segment. That was a wonderful icebreaker. So traditionally what we do is instead of kind of doing just your typical round of interviews, since we do know what both of your backgrounds look like, my question to both you, Michaela and Chris, is what is your association with content? So, Michaela, I think we'll have you start off, and then Chris will probably start another segment with you towards the rest of the podcast.
Yeah.
So just yep, there you go.
My association with content, it goes back quite a bit. I think I've always loved to write. I was like many people trying to find my way, going through school, not really knowing what I wanted to do. I graduated with an English degree, and back in, let's see, what year was this? 2010, 2011. It used to be called Elance, but now it's Upwork. But I found some freelance writing jobs, and I was really shocked to find that you can make money writing online, and that's how I got started. And since then, I've had 10 to 12 years as freelance writer, content marketer. And it's been a great learning experience. And I think content is at the core of everything I do as a marketer. Right now, I lead a team that's focused on the entire customer journey, but content powers every single stage of that journey. So to me, content is essential. I don't think a modern business can survive without really great content. And that's it's at the core of who I am. I love creating content start to finish.
Oh, you bet, Michaela. I think that was pretty spot on. And just like you said, content being the core of you, but also just the core of every business. So the businesses that aren't focused on their content, you might want to give a shout out to Michaela and Chris after this one. Chris, love to know what your association with content looks like today.
You know what's funny is what comes up, I think Michaela probably more correctly answered that. The thing that came up for me was like my association with the word itself, and it's terrible, but there's nothing better. And I've struggled with that for like the last 7 years. It's like, it's so vague.
True.
And when someone asks for content, there's so many questions that go into getting to the bottom of what one person means versus what someone else means. And so troubled is my relationship to the word content. But as far as association, I got started in content because I worked at a software company called Marketo, and I was a salesperson. And the objection I got over and over again was, "Hey, I'd love to buy this, but I don't have any content." And so I started to form this idea that content was a pretty valuable thing. And I also got a chance to see and look inside of what people were sending and felt like B2B could do better. Having come, like I was not that long out of college at that point. And I just knew the writing could be clearer and more precise, and I was interested. And so I started writing blogs to support my own deals. And then after a while, I was like, man, I love this writing thing, and I don't love this selling thing so much. And so I eventually made the switch, and I've been doing that ever since.
Love that. Love that from you, Chris. And just like you said, right, totally the opposite of you here. So for me, content writing is not my most favorite. I'm going to have to give you guys that disclaimer, but selling is definitely my favorite. But then again, I've got a lovely team at Paperflite that's got me covered with all things content. So really glad to have that. Wonderful round of introductions. Let's move on to the next segment that we call the Curiosity Counter. So just like the name suggests, in the Curiosity Room, we're going to explore a couple of questions that are not often explored, right? And hopefully here, curiosity doesn't get the cat killed, especially since we've got a cat Paperflite. His name is Mac, by the way. We'll probably send you a photo after the episode. So Chris, I think I'm going to have you start this round off for us. So we've got 3 different questions. We're going to have you answer each of them, and we'll kind of go back and forth based on what we've got our thoughts at, right? So first question for you, Chris, in the Curiosity Room. In the content world, there's craftsperson, the strategist, and the rare breed that balances both these sides. How can all these personalities coexist according to you?
So we actually made a pretty deliberate choice early on at Fenwick to decide that there was no difference between the creative and the strategist, and that they'd have to be, every creative has to be their own strategist. And part of the thinking behind that is you have to make the things that you propose, because if someone is only responsible for proposing things, they tend to do really big, fantastic, amazing sounding stuff that the person who's executing on it hates them for. And if we combine those two in one person, then they go through a couple of cycles of proposing something that is totally unrealistic but sounds excellent, and start to learn what really works. And so everyone at Fenwick has a combined title. It's writer and strategist, or designer and strategist. But we talk about this a lot, like it is 2 different brains. So it's very tough to switch, and it's hard to do both of those in the same day. And if you have to context switch 3 or 4 times back and forth, your brain is just mush by the end of the day. So, there's upsides and downsides to the way that we do it. But I think I think of it as like the skin in the game principle. Like if you're going to say we're going to do this, like you also have to be the person to help do it. Which for sure, I think also leads to interesting stuff, right? Like someone who has a background in literature is like going to propose something that references literature because they have a lot of material for it. And so I think there's some efficiencies that come with that.
Yep, that's fair enough. And just since you mentioned that, the brain can kind of get into a mush, since there really is 2 different sides of the brain, right? What have you done to kind of get yourself out of a mush on a bad day like that, Chris?
Exercise. Yeah. Go for a run, do something active is probably the only thing. And that's like optimistic me saying that. Normal me just powers through it. But like you should exercise.
No, fair enough. Getting the dopamine from another way, right? It's either exercise or just a cup of coffee. Lovely. That's great. So how do you bring about an editorial shift in perspective within B2B firms and set up teams for success, Chris?
Oof. That's the toughest thing. So we do a lot of talking about this lately. We call it content operation. So a lot of times companies come in and they want to purchase blog posts. And if you ask them why they want those blog posts 3 or 4 times, what you get back to is, we're not sure. Our competitors are doing it. It's just what's done. The sales team is asking for it. And getting the mindset of what you're trying to achieve with content marketing, like, it's tough. And it usually honestly just requires a leader who understands it. It requires someone like Michaela in that position to be guiding that in the situations where we get approached by a company that doesn't have a marketing leader who already gets it. Like, it just tends not to work. The editorial mindset has to be, for me, reader first. And if they at all start to get mired in what I'll call inside out marketing, which is the company thinking about what it wants and then putting that out there and then wondering why it's not working, and so running ads against it and then filling the ads with ads, you start outside in. What do people want to hear? And it's really rare and exciting to see someone with a true editorial mindset get into the B2B space, because they wipe all that stuff off the table. And they say, hey guys, we're not going to publish about the new hires on the blog anymore. That's not what this is for. No one's asking us about that. We need to just be solely focused what those readers are interested in, and work backwards and find out the topics of overlap, and sometimes write about things that don't reference our product and are just purely because it's interesting to them. But as far as instituting that, like, yeah, the person who owns the organization generally just has to understand.
I think that's a pretty neat outtake on that, Chris. And since you mentioned with Michaela as well, Michaela, being the leader that you are in the space, do you want to just chime in on the same thoughts that Chris shared with us with this one?
Yeah, I think one thing that I always say is content strategy is business strategy. I think at the end of the day, the reason that you're here as a marketing team is to contribute to the bottom line of the business. Like, that's the end all be all metric that every marketer is held accountable to. I think it's easy to get caught up in the vanity metrics of, hey, we grew the blog by, 50x quarter over quarter.
Right.
That's great, right? How did that trickle down to your sales? How did that contribute to revenue? We talked earlier about proving the ROI. I think, identifying who your best customers are and being their go-to resource for what they need to solve their problem, applying that jobs to be done framework for your customer to your content. It's a great lens by which I view all the content that we create at General Assembly and throughout my career, because that's how you say, even if a piece doesn't do well in search, right? We're not ranking number one, but you know what? We got, 100 people clicked this in our email nurture journey, and, 2 wanted to talk to sales. That's a win, right? So I think, going back to how are we impacting the business and making the content about that customer and how are we serving them? I think that to me is the ultimate end all be all goal of content.
I love it. Love the process that's been so beautifully explained by the both of you. I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to take notes on this once we're done with the call as well. And the last one for you, Chris, is what are your thoughts on developing a unique point of view in a saturated market?
I mean, that's tough.
How would you say
that's
that?
It totally depends on. Yeah, I'd say that I'm not sure what to comment on that one. It's, it requires vision. Certainly that vision has to come from an expert in the space. I think that probably it doesn't come from an outside party, unless that outside party is the user or has been that user before. So go to the source, find people doing the work, and then ask them what's interesting, what's not interesting, who do you allow into your inbox, what do you subscribe to, and then start to work back from that point of like what's interesting to them. And then asking subject matter experts what questions they have for other subject matter experts.
Interesting. That's a good outtake on that. And what about you, Michaela? What would you feel about maintaining that uniqueness when it comes to a market that's almost dwindling down, for example?
Yeah, I think it comes back to your product. Why do you exist? A lot of times throughout my career, I've seen, people go to marketing and they expect us to fix the messaging, right? Like, oh, just make this resonate more, or just, make this more interesting. And it's difficult to do that unless the organization has a line behind, here's where we're positioned in order to make a difference in the market. Here's the unique value that we bring with our product or service. I think in my career, like my best friends have always been like the product marketer, or even higher up the chain, like the founder. Like, I want to hear directly from you. Like, why did you found
Right.
this company? What did you see that was missing in the space?
Mm-hmm.
And then how are we delivering on that today? And that should be where all the content comes from. It shouldn't be the marketer's job to go out and try to come up with the positioning on the fly as they're testing ad copy. Like, we should already know what that is. And I think using that as the foundation can help you help spur on, different, more top of funnel hooks, and you can have those brainstorms, and that's great. But at the end of the day, tying that back to the uniqueness of the product, I think is critical.
Lovely, Michaela. So I think just to kind of sum that up, I think one of the key things is that better be prepared to ensure that you've got victory on your side, irrespective of the stage that it is at, right? So thank you, Chris, for addressing the questions we had for you today in the Curiosity Room. Michaela, we're going to make you the star now for this specific segment. First question for you, Michaela, is what is something you wish more brands knew when it comes to talking about their competition as part of their content strategy?
Yeah, I think a lot of brands are scared to do this. I think, to me, you shouldn't be. that's my one-liner is don't be scared to talk about your competition when you're building your content and going to market. I think a lot of brands start with, a scarcity mindset, right? There's only so many customers out there, and we are in this fight to the death to get as many of them as possible. I think it's important to keep in mind that, there's really an endless supply of customers out there. They just might not be ready to be your customer yet, right? So have that abundance mindset. I think that sets the tone for how you talk about your competitors in your messaging. And then I think, the second thing I would say is just being clear on how you're different, right? That comes back to what I was already saying. Like, when you are clear and strong and steady in your value prop, I think it's easier for you to identify who you're the best fit for, right? And when you do that, you can have really targeted messaging that speaks directly to that person. And you can, compare yourself to the competitors and say, hey, if this is what you're looking for, we're the best fit for you. And here's why. So I think just not being scared to really go to bat. I think as marketers, our job is to do marketing, but it's also to sell, right? Or to help sales sell, right? And so not being scared to do that, I think is critical.
I can tell, Michaela, you're very fearless about coming to, taking competition head on. And I bet that's how the attitude everyone should have when it comes to talking about competition, because at the end of it, being fearful is not going to get you anywhere. And just like you mentioned, right, the pool of customers is endless. It's just about the right timing to ensure and make sure that it's the right fit. So cheers on that one. On to our second question. What are some missed opportunities while trying to create content that drives revenue?
Yeah, I think we're on a good trend here, right? Which is proving the ROI of content. I like this. I think one thing that companies I see do a lot is, again, like I was saying earlier, just really go after more of the brand awareness bucket before they build out more of the bottom of the funnel pieces that you really need. What's the point of driving tons and tons of people to your website if you don't have the conversion points built and ready for those people to make their way through your funnel and take the next step and learn more about your product? So I would say starting at the bottom of the funnel, right? If it's like a comparison blog post, for example, or if it's like a checklist on how to solve a problem that your product is intrinsically built for. I think that is how I always start with building content strategies, and then work your way back up the funnel. I forget who said it. Someone I was having a conversation with on Twitter the other day was like, why fill a leaky bucket, right? So it's like, why bring a bunch of people in if you don't have the information and the education to serve them to take the next step? So I think that's a really big missed opportunity with companies. I would say, build your mid to bottom of funnel content first, and then worry about, driving an insane amount of traffic, because you're going to have the foundation and the structure in place to serve those people.
That's a pretty good one, and I definitely am going to say I appreciate that because that's my inner salesperson saying that we always love content that helps the sales team out. Chris, do you want to chime in on that with regards to missed opportunities for content that helps everybody drives revenue?
We are generally less involved in bottom of funnel stuff, stuff that drives revenue. You know, for us, the most important thing is capturing interest and attention. We're really focused on the top of the funnel and getting people into that funnel. I think that if I had to say the one biggest missed opportunity is probably a lack of product knowledge among the top of funnel content team, because the most powerful thing that they can do is know so much about the product that they don't mention it. By which I mean they know so much about what it does, what it doesn't do, how it compares to the competition, that they're seeding in these little landmines all throughout the content, starting at the very highest level. I think that Marketo did a really good job of this, seeding a lot of the top of funnel content with questions like, can you customize your funnel? Because at the time, no competitive platform could. And it felt like a very innocuous thing to say, but if you buy into that idea, you have to buy Marketo. You can't buy Pardot because you can't customize the funnel. And so seeding those sort of product level differentiators into the very high level content, I think that's a big one, because then it's guiding people down the funnel to the rest of the stuff.
Perfect. I know, Chris, you said you don't focus too much on that bottom of the funnel, but you seem to got it right. And I love that we've kind of got both of the ideas as to more top of the funnel from you and then bottom to middle from Michaela. And the last one for you, Michaela, before we jump in to another fun round, is how involved should the sales team be in the content creation process?
I love working with sales teams. You'll be happy to know this, Caleb. I think for the sales team, they obviously are, they have a single focus, and that is get to that next conversation, get to that next milestone, and close the deal. They're having so many conversations one-to-one with real people that are almost ready to buy or ready to buy every single day. So I see the sales team as being probably one of the top two teams that I want to be talking to on an almost daily basis in a B2B organization. I would say the second team is the customer success team, because they're talking to happy customers or unhappy customers every day, right? So that's interesting too. But from a sales team perspective, I think the things that I've done in the past are have regular check-ins with sales leadership and say, hey, where are all these deals getting hung up? Why are we losing on a certain segment of deals? Are there any trends that you're hearing? I also go to the sales team to get information around perception of us versus the competitors, because maybe we haven't done a really great job positioning ourselves against the competitors, right? Maybe the market is hearing something a little bit different than what we intended. I think the sales team can deliver that information back, and then we can tweak our messaging accordingly. I see it working as very much a flywheel, right? So the sales team can say, hey, I'm getting, this question. I got this question 5 times last week. Can you create a one-pager for me? I can shoot this out to all of my contacts. And then I can say, that's interesting. I wonder what else we could create, right? Or how else we could educate. I think the challenges that I've found in the past is, sales, obviously they're really good at selling. I'm really good at creating content.
Correct.
They might not necessarily know what they need. So to me, I'm always trying to kind of get at what problem are you trying to solve? Because sometimes a one-pager is not going to do it. We need something different. But that's on me to kind of put on my journalistic hat and ask those questions of the sales team and say, okay, so why do you think we need this one pager? What are you hearing in the market? And then those insights can translate to the rest of the content.
Love that from you, Michaela. I think marketing and sales teams that have to be in sync in order to make sure that everybody's running successful. Chris, do you want to just close us off with your past sales experience, especially since you actually ended up into all of this by creating your own blogs? I'd love to hear that from you.
Yeah, I think that I agree with everything Michaela said. I also think that it takes a lot of training. because I think about myself as an account executive, and everything was an emergency. And it wasn't until taking on this role that I look back and I'm like, wow, I was probably a huge pain. Like every deal is like, that could be my job. Versus for the marketing team, they're like, great, we're listening to you. So I think that the most important thing to do with the salespeople is, one, teach them to bring you problems, not solutions, right? Because the salesperson comes to you and says, I need a white paper on this vertical. You're like, great, tell me why. And it ends up, there's no why. They just think it would be nice to send an outreach to a client that hasn't yet engaged with them. You're like, okay, of all the resources, like that goes to the bottom. But if you can tell them to bring you problems, like, hey, I really want to go after credit unions, then you can start to build that out and help you build a business case. Cool. Have you pulled a list? How many credit unions? Do we have any customers that are credit unions? If they can come to you and say, hey, here's a plan essentially for my territory, that's a great relationship. And then similarly, they're fantastic for hunting down stats, quotes, and anecdotes. So bringing you things like, hey, by the way, I overheard this on a call is great, because you can feed that into the content and make it very, very realistic in a way that if you're somewhat detached in the sales team and you're just tossing stuff over the wall, you're not going to have those little anecdotes in there that convince a reader that you're one of them.
Love it, Chris. And on that note, I'm going to try to come to my marketing team with more problems and lesser solutions, so that I don't end up without an answer when they're asking me why I need a white paper or why I need a one-pager phone of my client. So thank you for that. I love it. With this, we're going to move on to our next segment, which might be my specific favorite one. And for this one, in the words I've got ready for today, the segment's called Explain Like I Am 5. So what we're going to do is I'm going to give you both a marketing term, and you're going to have to explain it to me as if I was 5 years old. And given the things we've actually already spoken about, some might even say that I looked into the future and I already knew what words I was going to pick out right out of your mouth from our conversation that's happened already. So, Michaela, I'm going to have you start off this one. The word for you to explain to me if I was a 5-year-old is integrated marketing.
Oof. All right. This is good though, because I have a 6-year-old, so this is mommy explaining her job. So to me, integrated marketing. Let's see. If I'm 5, there's lots of different ways you can go and talk to someone that you want to be friends with. You could write them a letter. You could find them on Facebook Messenger Kids and send them a message. You could show up at their house. Integrated marketing is when you're writing them a message on all of those ways, all at the same time in a way that makes sense, so they know that you want to be friends with them. That's what I would say.
Sounds pretty good. I bet your kid would be proud of you, Michaela. If your child understands that, I can promise you that any other 5-year-old is going to make sense of that as well. And Chris, for you to explain to a 5-year-old is content operations.
Let's say that you want to play a baseball game. Okay. How do you get the game started? Do you tell everyone to go out into the field and just start throwing a ball and see what happens? Or do you pick a team first and give each person a position and tell them what team they're on and instruct them and hand a person a bat and explain how the game is going to go and then start throwing a ball? Content operations is the latter.
I love it. I think every kid loves baseball. Those that don't, I'm sure they can put it into their own sport and make of that. Chris, even without a kid, I think you did pretty well. So good job on that one. All right, folks, I think we are now getting ready towards just a little bit of the end. I know we've got caffeine in our system, so this round's really going to get us, shake all of that caffeine out of our bodies. And what this round is, rapid fire. So I'm sure everyone's already played this at some point in their lives, at work or at a party. I'm going to send you some questions, and I need you to answer as rapidly as possible. Out of the both of you, which one would like to start first? I'm going to leave this up to both of you.
Michaela, you go.
All right.
All right. First reaction it is. All right, Michaela, first question for you as part of the rapid fire where we've got 5 different questions. What website traffic isn't just a vanity metric? Why or why not?
Time on page and return visitors. I
Love
would
it.
say
And
time on page shows you the interaction with your content. Return visitors shows you how many people you hooked.
pretty straightforward. Love the rapidness of it. Second question, what is your gripe with content calendars?
Oof. I think content calendars do more for everyone else besides the content team. What I like more than a content calendar is a content production pipeline. I usually build a content pipeline. That's the number one Google Sheet that I build for any client or company that I work for. It's more about that you're publishing, not when. No one's sitting around waiting for you to publish on your blog. So I think it's not as important as many people think it is.
Fair enough. Love it. Third question for you, Michaela, is you've worn the hats of an English major, part-time music teacher, and a piano player. Has the cross-industry experience ever come in handy?
Absolutely. My time teaching music taught me that you can have one idea or concept, and 2 different kids who are at the same level will need an entirely different way for you to explain it for them to understand. I think that taught me a lot about, meeting your customers where they're at, mentoring people on your team where they're at. I think everyone is so unique and different, and it's all about testing messaging and testing concepts and how to communicate them. So it comes in handy every single day.
That's wonderful. I bet you love it all the more. Fourth one for you, Michaela, is what is the most underrated question you have to ask before formulating a content strategy?
Underrated question. I think a lot of content strategists start with who is the audience? And I don't think that that's the right question. I think the right question is, how does this business make money? I think that would be the question that I would want to start with. Who is your best customer? How do you make money from that person? And I think then you backtrack from there.
Fantastic. And the last one for the rapid fire round for you, Michaela, is why should more brands hire former journalists for the role of content marketers?
I think content today is all about having expert insights. 10 years ago, I could be the one Googling 10 CRM tools you should try, right? And I could write that blog. I think today, in that example, a marketer wants to hear from other marketers, right? Like, why or why not do you like this tool or this product? I think expert insights are what drives great content forward and impactful content forward. And journalists know how to get expert insights. I think building a subject matter expert database is critical to every modern content operation, and journalists know exactly how to do that. So.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Michaela. I think you did a fantastic job. And just before we get started with Chris, how do you think you'd rate yourself on a score of 1 to 5 for this rapid fire round?
Oof. A solid 3.
3? I bet you did. Oh, I'd definitely give you a 4.5, if not a 5. So Chris, you definitely got heavy competition. Let's get you started with today's rapid fire round. Chris, you ready? Caffeine all pumped up for you?
Ready.
Wonderful. All right. First question for you, Chris, is what content buzzword should be banned forever?
Optimize.
Love it. And second question, do you believe in creating content according to the 3-stage funnel?
Yeah, I think it can be helpful. There's a quote I like a lot by a mathematician that is, the map is not the territory. And I think a lot of times marketers can get confused with the architecture being a proper representation of the world. And I think it's a useful guide, except when you can break the rules and you just see an opportunity that doesn't fit the funnel. Like, that doesn't mean don't do it.
Makes sense. I think then we're going to have to respect the caveats. Third question for you, Chris, is a B2B content marketer and a newsroom editor walk into a bar. What happens next?
Oh, they probably complain.
Complain to the extent that they get kicked out of the bar? Are they still going to leave sane without trying to kill each other?
Yeah, that sounds reasonable. It probably involves a lot of drinking. I don't know. They have a lot of grapes.
Fair enough. We might want to have to try that one out in person. All right, this one's a little bit more towards your company as well. At Fenwick, you believe that superior writing deserves superior designs too. What led you to believe that, Chris?
I think so. What we've arrived at too is that they're intertwined. They're indivisible. I think that anywhere companies are siloing the writers and the designers, like something's going very wrong because those are two halves of one coin. It's one story. And what led us to that is writing ebooks where we would just absolutely labor over the story, and it would be dark and it would be moody, and we would hand it to the company's designer and they would drop it into a templated deck with Salesforce raccoons on it, and it just became creepy. And there was just always a slight disconnect. And it's interesting you talked about earlier on publishing a white paper you hadn't read. Like that's the number one thing for our designers. Like they read the stuff. They read the stuff. They know the story. They're involved at the ideation stage, so they can maybe intercept it and be like, "Hey guys, I know one's really committed to this being this certain format. It's the wrong format. It should be something else." So very important, I think, to have both of those involved from the beginning.
I love it. Might want to see that those creepy raccoons from you, Chris, after that. Sure, nobody wants to see it on the podcast, but just for me. And the last question for today for you, Chris, is what difference can an editor-in-chief make not just to the quality of content, but also to the brand narrative?
The writing is thinking, and somebody who is guiding a writing organization is guiding an organization that's trying to feel out the company's story and are discovering new things, new threads. So I think that's like, it's the company narrative in action. Like every article is a test. How are people reacting to this? How did this argument feel? Did we land on, through this research, a statistic that belongs in everything? So it's sort of like discovery.
Very cool. I think that wraps it up for you, Chris. And just like I did for Michaela, how would you rate yourself on a score of 1 to 5, Chris?
Oh, no comment. I can't rate myself. I don't know.
That one might be me. Perfect. Love it. I think we've had a wonderful conversation, Chris and Michaela, today. Just on that note, I am very grateful for all of the information we've got from you. And I'm going to make sure that come Monday morning, I'm going to give my marketing team a big pat on their back for all the great work that they do. And with that, today's episode is concluded. I thank you both for your time. And I also look forward to having you sometime in the future on Cuppa Press.
Thank you so much, Caleb. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
And Michaela,
it's a pleasure.